Welcome. My name is Kiersten Parsons. I'll be hosting our webinar today. It is 2 p.m., so we are going to jump in and get started. There's a lot of information that I have to share with you today. But the good news is that we are recording this webinar today. So if there's somebody that you wanted to share it with that isn't able to join, or if you're multitasking, or if you join late, we will have that recording for you. Just shoot me an email or call one of our offices and we'll make sure you get that link. So what we'll be talking about today is navigating assisted living and memory care, and talking about what those options are, and pretty specifically just these two settings. So I do want to introduce kind of what the other settings and levels of care are in a community and in the retirement world. But really today we're going to be trying to answer those questions about assisted living. I think, this audience is made up of individuals who are thinking about this for themselves or a loved one, and maybe have participated in some tours and been to communities, but I would say are still in the kind of the early stages of figuring out maybe what makes sense. And so hopefully today's call is a way that you can, in a non-threatening environment, can just kind of listen and absorb a lot of information without feeling like you're the one asking a dumb question. There are no dumb questions, but hopefully I can get to all of those answers and share some really good information with you today. So ahead of jumping in, I just want to introduce myself. I've been with the Ingleside communities. I guess I'm heading into my 8th year. So we are 3 life plan communities, and I'll share certainly more about what that means. The Ingleside organization operates in Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia, Prince William County. And we have these 3 life plan communities that also have services that extend to the greater community. So I will share a little bit about that today as well. It's not really the focus of our call, but I do want to try to present to you all of the ways that we are partnering with the greater community. And that is really what my current role is. I do a lot of work trying to support our village members who may or may not be on a wait list for one of the Ingleside communities. I work with a lot of professionals on educational events. So I really have a fulfilling role where I'm able to support both family members and professional care team members who are all trying to do the same thing, help older adults age in a healthy and vibrant way. So my experience in senior living actually started in the nursing department. So I worked as a certified nursing assistant for years in a skilled nursing facility. That has certainly informed so much of my own experiences and care and understanding of the senior living world, really starting in that most dependent care setting, which I'll share a little bit more about in today's call. I transitioned into actually working as a registered dietitian, and again, still in senior living services, a little bit of community work as well, and then have migrated into kind of the residential side and helping people identify a community to live. But what has been interesting is over the 15 years that I've worked in kind of the senior living space has been multiple different roles and in multiple different settings. And so that's been helpful, particularly as I share information with you today. It doesn't just reflect what Ingleside offers. I've been able to work in standalone skilled nursing and rehab settings. I've worked in assisted livings that are just assisted living and memory care. And then I've worked in life plan communities. So it has been helpful to me as I try to share information to have that experience of working in multiple different areas. So we have 2 events coming up in February. I've circled the dates there for you in red. So the Wine Women in Dementia is this Saturday, actually. We don't often do weekend events, but it was important to us to pick a date that adult children who may be working and can't attend things during the week could participate in. So this is an in-person event at our Northwest DC property, Ingleside at Rock Creek. So that community is hosting a private showing of this film that is, I have not seen it yet. I'm actually really grateful that I'll be able to be there on Saturday to view it. I've heard it's very impactful, a story that is about caregivers coming together as they support a loved one with dementia. So You are invited if that's something that you're available this Saturday and would like to attend. Again, just shoot me an email or call the offices and one of us will get you those details. And then we have a virtual event, so very similar to this one where you, from the comfort of your home, can log in and join us on February 18th at 11 a.m. We will be actually featuring Sunday Health. They are a medical practice that really specializes in the early stages of cognitive change. So we will be joined by Dr. Ackerley, Dr. Doyle, and Dr. Elwood, and they'll be sharing just some of the latest information and research in terms of prevention, detection, and treatment. So that should be a really informative event. And again, it's virtual. So you're able to join from the comfort of your home. Just go online and register. If you're not comfortable going online or have any difficulty finding that, again, just give us a call and one of us will help you get registered. Okay, so we're going to jump in now to today's conversation, which is on assisted living and memory care options. And so I think what's helpful ahead of jumping into what is assisted living is actually zooming out and talking about this full continuum. So if we think about all of the levels of care within a senior setting, there's kind of these 3 points. So if independent living is point A, and then on the other side, skilled nursing is point C, then we do have assisted living in the middle as point B. Independent living, very much how it sounds, that kind of point A would be an individual who is really looking for a lifestyle and a concierge type of community where there are services and support that is social in nature, dining venues, activities and programs. Sometimes it might be somebody who's lost a partner and they're thinking, you know what, I want to be in community. That maybe wasn't part of my original plan, but I want to have dinner with other people. I don't want to have to think to myself every single weekend, what are my plans? I want to look at a schedule and see, oh, there's this movie, there's this trip, you know, that's what I want to do. So it's a very much a social setting. It's non-regulated, meaning that there is not standards for nursing support to be present. There are not standards for staffing ratios. So there's, you know, it's just when we say non-regulated, we just mean it's not a medical setting. So you very well may have a concierge physician group who rents office space in the independent living, or you may have a wellness nurse who's there Monday through Friday, or you may have, you know, a visiting physician or dietitian or any of these options of individuals who come in and provide some ancillary support. But in the independent living setting, it's non-medical. If we kind of jump over B on the continuum right now and talk about kind of C, that skilled nursing facility license level, that's a very dependent care setting. So we're talking kind of a polar opposite of independent living. In the skilled nursing facility setting, we're saying whether it's for short-term rehab or for long-term care, an individual is there because they are dependent on care for a significant amount of support. So you, and we'll share a little bit more about what activities of daily living means, but when we think about being in a skilled nursing facility setting, somebody could be dependent for transfers, for medications, for using the restroom. So there's quite a few activities where they're saying they might not be able to do any of that for themselves. And again, that might be for a short amount of time. They've had a hip operation. They're an otherwise pretty active adult. They are going to rehab for a couple of weeks. And then the goal is to head home to whatever that setting may be where they're much more independent. So that's short term. And then there's long-term care. When we talk about long-term care, we're saying permanently something has changed in terms of their care plan and their needs where they now are going to be needing significant support without end. So we would permanently now be residing in skilled nursing level of care. So we jumped over B, the middle of that continuum, and that's assisted living. So that is this kind of sweet spot in the middle where you're saying, you know what, there's some support that's needed. There's certain things that we can identify that, you know, myself or my loved one cannot do completely by ourselves, but we're cognizant of what goes into it, or we know that, yes, we take our medications, but we can't remember which pill it is, or I know exactly what to take, what the dose is, what the name is, but those pills are so small and I can't, you know, I don't have the dexterity to take them myself. So that might be something where in assisted living, they're able to help with medication management. Or, you know what, I know when to shower. I know that I need to shower. I know my whole routine in the shower, but the problem is that has now become a little bit dangerous for me. And so maybe we're looking at an environment where somebody can just stand right outside the shower curtain, but they're there. And that's a huge peace of mind to know. Or you used to enjoy cooking, you don't enjoy cooking anymore, or again, things have changed with dexterity or ability. So you can feed yourself, you know what you like to eat, you want to choose different dining venues, much like an independent living resident, but you want 3 meals a day and you want it close by. You don't want to have to go far for a dining room. So again, a lot of the social side and concierge service and flexibility of independent living, but blended with 24/7 nursing staff being present. So the beautiful part about this is they are not in your room, one-to-one care, the way it might be if you're home with a nursing assistant that you're personally paying. This is an environment, you think about kind of group share, where the entire assisted living neighborhood floor or couple floors all share nursing team members who are supporting multiple people. And so that's what assisted living is. Those team members are there 24/7, but not necessarily with you in your room providing one-to-one support 24/7. Now, when we talk about memory care, I just want to be specific that the Ingleside communities use the term memory support. And that can be annoying to say, oh, why is there different language? The reason for that is because our communities, as life plan communities, uniquely have all 3 levels of care. So we have independent living, we have assisted living, and we have skilled nursing facilities all on one campus. That's unusual. Most communities do not have that. And so we want to differentiate between memory care, which in some of our communities is available at that skilled nursing facility level, where it's really a dependent care situation for somebody who's in the most advanced stages of cognitive change. We want to differentiate that from memory support, which for us just means kind of upstream from that. We're at the assisted living level setting. There is so much that that person can do independently, but yet there is this diagnosis, and we are providing cueing and constant kind of programming and redirection and meals. So there's so much that we're doing that's at that assisted living level, but it's not totally, dependent, and they can't do anything for themselves. And so really kind of for our communities, nuancing that memory support is different from memory care. When you are touring in the greater area and you are saying, hey, I just called up a random place and I asked if they had memory support, they're probably not going to know what that is. So for the greater community, memory care is really that accepted term that means it's the assisted living level of care, and the individuals there are diagnosed with some form of cognitive change. So we were talking earlier a little bit about activities of daily living and what that means. So if you've never heard that term before, it is really just a medical term that's given to the things that you and I may do with complete independence and take for granted. So bathing, walking, toileting, transfers from toilet to back to wheelchair, or from bed to wheelchair, or just standing and pivoting to a walker. So any type of transferring, and then eating, something that is actually multiple steps, right? The preparing of the food and then the eating of it, whether that's a dexterity or vision thing that may have changed there. So when we talk about ADLs, and you'll hear that term if you've been in either a skilled nursing or an assisted living setting, that's what we're referring to. And so you see these statistics here of individuals in an assisted living setting, how many need help with that particular activity of daily living. So I think this data is now a couple years old from 2023. But 75% of people need help with bathing. And that really makes sense. That's an activity that can be dangerous just by the nature of slips and falls. When we talk about needing assistance with walking, where you might hear the term ambulating, that can mean just getting from your room to the dining room and making sure that that's a safe transition from one space to another. So it does not mean that everyone is in a wheelchair and cannot walk. It really means even if they're in the wheelchair, do they need support ambulating from one area to another? And then you see the others, toileting and transfers and eating. 62% of people in the assisted living setting do require support with 3 or more activities of daily living. So that may answer a question for you, which is, if I only need help with one of these things, or if my loved one is only needing help with one of these things, depending on kind of what it is and what safety measures you can put in place in their current home setting, maybe you don't need to be transitioning to assisted living yet, but it's a good thing to maybe be thinking about a wait list or touring communities, or just kind of even just being on today's call and thinking, how do I learn more about assisted living? I'm not there yet with needing help 3 or more activities of daily living, but I'm starting to think of what the future looks like. So I was introducing what assisted living is, and then kind of thinking that as point B on our continuum, and then nuancing how memory support is that dementia-specific care still within that assisted living setting. So one of the things I want to share with you, and it's very helpful, I think, to nuance this, is that in most communities, there's going to be a separate, whether they call it a neighborhood, a floor, a cohort, whatever the terminology is, there's going to be a separate environment or space for individuals in memory care than there is for individuals in what they might call traditional assisted living or just simply assisted living. And so the reason for that is that individuals who are experiencing cognitive change are going to have some different needs from an individual who simply has had some physical changes. And so maybe you think of your loved one, they are in their early 90s and can still tell you everything about their day and no cognitive change. They don't need support with cueing or figuring out their day. But there's some weakness physically. So there's been some changes where they need support, maybe just someone making their meals or someone providing medications or doing their laundry. So you think, wow, that assisted living environment sounds perfect, but they don't need any cognitive direction or support. Whereas you may have somebody who is in their early 60s, does not need any physical support. They're able to dress themselves and use the restroom and safely shower. And in fact, they may help push the wheelchair for somebody else. You think of strong and active physically, but now there's been some cognitive changes. There may or may not already be a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's, and they're needing an environment that supports them because of those cognitive changes and not just physical changes. And so that's why today's will traditional assisted living neighborhood or setting from a memory support or memory care. And so what we should look at when we're touring or talking about these two different settings is program delivery, staff training, secure environment, and staffing ratio. So program delivery should be different in these two settings. An example of what that would look like is, for example, assisted living, the traditional setting. We love a good music program. There's a concert at 7 p.m. It's 2 hours long. It's an accomplished pianist. Maybe there's a break in the middle, but otherwise we're sitting for 2 hours and enjoying this pianist. We may know the music that he's playing or the composers, and that's kind of the setting there. You think about a memory support setting. We still love music. That was a big part of our lives, but we're not going to probably be doing that at 7 p.m. We are probably not able to sit for a 2-hour program. We probably need a little bit of interaction. So either a shorter program or interaction throughout the program. And then who's delivering that content is also probably different. So as opposed to a musician or performer who's doing a kind of one-sided delivery of something to us and we're passively receiving that, in a memory setting, you may have a licensed musical therapist who is engaging the audience. So they stop after a song and say, who knows that composer? Or, who remembers the name of that prelude? Or they're going to kind of involve the audience. And yes, I think we've all been at concerts where maybe they do that anyways, but that's how, just one example of how maybe a program would be delivered differently in those two settings. So it's both situations, it's a musical program, but one is going to be shorter, more involvement. And that can apply to physical fitness programs, that can apply to intellectual or like historical conversations or any other type of delivery of a content program, like a news and reviews, that can apply to gardening and horticulture therapy and so many other different forms of things that we all enjoy, but just the delivery being different in these two settings and the individuals who are planning these programs being trained differently. So that brings us into staff training, where we talk about in the assisted living setting, having individuals who are registered nurses and certified nursing assistants. So really it's on the physical support side. How do we clinically and medically support the ways that your maybe body has changed and you're now needing assisted living support? When we're talking about a memory care or a memory support setting, again, it's still at the assisted living license level, right? So you still have those nurses and those certified nursing assistants. But in addition, they're going to have some training that's specific to dementia care. So in the Ingleside communities, we use the certified dementia practitioner training. So that is multiple hours, and then they receive a credential if they pass examination on the history of it, types and forms of it, different kind of training techniques. So you think of like validation therapy or redirection. So that is very specific to being in an environment where individuals have cognitive change and require an approach to care that is different from independent living or assisted living. When we talk about a memory care or memory support environment, in every community that I have been in, there's conversation about this changing, but currently that means a secured environment. So one of the biggest things that can happen with cognitive change is a loss of safety awareness. And so you may say, you know what, that's my parent. That's exactly what I'm thinking about. They are leaving the home at night. I don't know why, but I have a Ring camera on and I can see that without kind of any clear pattern of what they're trying to do. They're not trying to go get the mail, or, there's not a dog to take out to pee. I'm not sure why, but they're opening up the doors and they're leaving the house at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's concerning. And so when you think about a memory care or a memory support environment in a residential setting or a community, they're going to have that environment actually be locked. In an assisted living, that's not the case. And so in assisted living, your parent could say, hey, it's 8 p.m. I am meeting my daughter. I'm going to head down to the lobby. We're going to go out to a show. That kind of, I know what day it is, what time it is, who I'm meeting, where I'm going, that independence that's just different when cognitive change is present. And then lastly, staffing ratio. So in many settings, memory care is going to have a higher staffing ratio because they're not just having individuals who are your nurses and certified nursing assistants. They're actually also going to have full-time, whether they call them like social engagement or life enrichment associates. I've heard a ton of different terms for what they call this role, but it's really the individual who's non-clinical and they are supporting your loved one in redirection and programs and helping kind of cue them through their day. So, hey, you know what? You finished lunch a lot earlier than everybody else. Let's go over to this exercise bike and work on that for a few minutes. Or that puzzle that we started before lunch is waiting for us. Let's get back to that. So just kind of re-engaging, redirecting. Again, they're not supporting with using the bathroom. They're not providing medications, but they are full-time staff who are there in that environment providing that redirection. So I think one of the things that brings all of us to this call and we think, okay, this is why I'm here today, is to talk about when is assisted living a good option. So there is absolutely nothing black and white about this. It is very person specific. It is very family specific. So what is the support that's in place already from unpaid care partners who are there locally or able to support in that way with meals or other ways. Then you think about the environment that individual is in. Are they in a one-level rambler? Because that is easier to age in place than if they are in a row house with 3 levels. So there's nothing black and white about when assisted living is the right time, but there's some things that we can think about and jot down these bullet points to ask your family or who you're working with on this situation to say, you know what, we need to start thinking about when is assisted living the right option. Let's look at our situation and talk about, are frequent falls happening? That is not a normal and healthy part of aging. Something is going on. Either the environment is unsafe, could be as simple as there's throw rugs, those could get removed and all of a sudden that's a safer environment, or there's clutter, or we have adaptive equipment now, like a walker, which is supposed to support functionality, but because the environment is cluttered or there's rugs, it actually is a hindrance and that's caused some falls. There could be many reasons, medication imbalances, all sorts of things, just dehydration, why that's happening. So frequent falls is a reason why people start talking about assisted living. Being in an environment where nursing staff are present and the dwelling is 1 level is huge. So that's one reason why people start talking about it. Meal preparation at the time that starts to become difficult, or your loved one is really just maybe doesn't present the energy for cooking a meal and then eating that meal and then thinking just a few hours later about cooking another meal. Or if, there's just trouble with trying to get to the grocery store and buy those things. So whatever that looks like, that is, coming into play there. I've heard and seen about situations where it's as simple as they can no longer reach the microwave. Maybe it was their partner that did a lot of that. Their partner has passed, and now they're not just functionally able to use that space to prepare meals. So it can also, again, if a spouse has passed, that was very social, that they enjoyed meals together, and now the spouse who's remaining may say, I don't have any desire to eat anymore, prepare those meals. So any way around the fact that meals is changing, and that of course impacts their nutrition and their hydration. So that can again play into the first item of falling. Any trouble with navigating their current environment? So stairs is kind of the okay, no brainer, that's the big one. But it could be a tight bathroom where their mobility equipment doesn't fit. It could be a bed that is too high for them to get up to. I mean, there's multiple ways that the environment just simply doesn't work for them. And sometimes that's the easiest thing to change. And then that means, hey, if that's the only thing we're talking about, then maybe we postpone, or we don't need to be thinking further about assisted living right now. But if that's not the only thing, then that's one of many. Then it becomes a lot or overwhelming to think about how to change all of those items. Help needed with activities of daily living. We're already talking so much about that, the bathing, the dressing, the using the restroom safely. And so that is one of those things that we do often throughout the day. We are using the restroom frequently. There's no really great way to say, well, we're just going to have a private companion come for 2 hours in the morning. And that's the only time we use the restroom. Well, no, we use the restroom frequently throughout the day, and some days not as frequently. And there's not a great way to know, when do I need help in the home with these activities that, it's not as simple as bathing every other day. And I know exactly when I do that. So that can be tricky in a way that people start saying, you know what, I want to talk about assisted living where there's always help present. Medication management is a huge one. If there are not adult children nearby, or a spouse who cognitively and functionally is able to help the other spouse with medications, then that becomes a big reason in and of itself where moving to an environment where a nurse is present and able to provide those medications consistently at the appropriate times, whether it's before or after meals or the 2-hour space, is huge. And then support with activities of daily living that are, or things that are ancillary to activities of daily living. So laundry services and housekeeping and keeping your space in a way that is tidy. We don't think of those as activities of daily living because they're not categorized that way. But if you think about, going downstairs to the laundry room, if that's unsafe, well, now we've inserted an activity that needs to be done, but could lead to a fall. Or we think about housekeeping. You know what? It's too much work. We can't do it. But now there's clutter in the home, or it's unsafe in the kitchen because now there's, unsanitary items. So we don't think of these as top of mind, but they impact health and well-being. So everything that we've listed here is kind of what goes into maybe thinking about, is assisted living just traditional, something we should be talking about. On this next slide, I've added in some of the things that can change when someone has any form of dementia or cognitive change. And now we not only have the other, these top bullet points that we've already talked about, but we're adding in some things that don't apply when someone is just dealing with the physical side of things. So safety and isolation concerns is really one of the top things that brings families to my office to talk about our memory care and memory support neighborhoods and what that looks like for supporting their loved one because they are leaving the home unsafely, or they are not able to be in the kitchen because they are leaving appliances on, and that's unsafe. The isolation concerns are huge around, it could be as simple as, hey, mom always attended her place of worship. There was some snowstorms and some changes, and she didn't go for a couple weeks, and now I can't get her to go back. She's not agreeing to it. She acts like she's never been there, or that it's been years, and it's just been a few weeks. That type of little change, and all of a sudden they're isolating themselves, and you're saying, I want to get them back into these long-standing patterns of social engagement, but they're, there's this cognition change and they're withdrawing. And so we see this and say, okay, we don't want to accelerate the rate of their cognitive change. We don't want them to be isolated. How do we get them back into a community? So mild cognitive impairment or just the diagnosis itself is a reason why some families will come and start talking with me about, hey, my spouse is exhibiting these behaviors. They're not unsafe yet, but we want to go ahead and get on a wait list because we know that we have an Alzheimer's diagnosis now. There is a desire for somebody else to be the care partner. So I've had spouses say, you know what, I know that your staff are trained in dementia care and these best approaches to caring for my loved one. I want to just be the husband. I don't want to be de-escalating them, redirecting them, being their care partner for using the restroom or all of the meal prep. I also am an older adult and can't do that. And so sometimes it's just saying, I want them to be in an environment where the staff are already trained in this way and can just really involve them and envelop them in a safe environment. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but when a secured environment is necessary, it almost makes it so that other choices are off the table. If your loved one is leaving at night or leaving the burners on or just things that are around safety awareness, it just makes a specific memory care environment kind of one of the only options for safety and well-being. So I know that's a lot of information packed into 2 slides. And again, we're recording this, so if that's something you have to go back to, I understand, that's a long conversation in and of itself, and it may not be completely helpful to just kind of rush through in 2 slides. But in the effort to try to present a lot more information, I'm just going to move forward to talking about the types of communities that are out there and things that you can find and start doing some of your own research on really what's out there and what might you want to join a wait list for if this is a conversation your family's having. So small group homes, this is the assisted living license level that they've pursued. And if this is something that you're not familiar with, then it's going to be an interesting concept to you. It is sometimes as few as 8 individuals and then up to, I think I've seen 14 in a home. So it is a residential style home. It could be in your neighborhood where you drive past and you never really realize that that's what that was. It might look like a home daycare where you're like, wow, that looks like a parking lot out front. It doesn't quite look like a home, but the outside kind of looks like a home. Well, they have pursued an assisted living license level. They have modified each of the bedrooms in that home and hallways, and they have 1 large dining room and kitchen. And then there's these 8 residences or 12 or however many it may be, where individuals can receive care just in that home setting. So this is very specific because if you're saying, you know what, that's perfect for my loved one, they do not want to be in a large community. I just want them to be kind of cared for in that home-like environment, but we can't do it personally. Then this may be a great fit. And for any of the options I list, you can reach out to me after this call and I can share with you professionals I know in the area who support or are affiliated with some type of community like this. When a small group home may not be the right fit is when you're saying, my loved one is not in their early 90s. They don't want to just stay and watch TV in this group home setting or have an occasional craft at the dining room table together. They're 63 and they want to be in an exercise class. They want to have a swimming pool. They want to go to musical programs. They want multiple dining venues. When I come with them to the community, I want to be able to take a walk on the walking trail. You think of, I just want a bigger space. They can't be in a single family home. Well, then that group home obviously isn't going to be the right choice. There's also memory care only communities. And so this is, again, still that assisted living license level, but they are not offering independent living. They're not offering skilled nursing facility. They're not offering even traditional assisted living. They're only offering a secured environment throughout all of their residences. And their team is highly specialized in memory care. And so I have referred to this type of setting. And one of the times or ways that I have is because if an individual has significant behaviors where it could be disruptive to other individuals in a residence, we know that maybe a small group home would not be the right setting, but they need some intense care, maybe even psychiatric care or having a psychiatric physician, either on staff or frequently visiting the community. These memory care only communities are sometimes able to do more nuanced care for all different forms of dementia, because that's all they're doing. And so you might think about it being kind of less on the amenities side of things, right? They're not going to have that indoor pool or all the other options I just mentioned, but that's really not what we need at that juncture. So they've got what you need for intense memory care. When we think about freestanding assisted living and memory support communities, this is far and away the most prevalent type of community. So driving down the street and you see a community that is visibly a retirement community, it is most likely an assisted living and memory support. They may even have some independent residences, but by and large, they're doing a lot of assisted living license levels. So both the memory care or memory support and that traditional assisted living. And then lastly, your life plan community is a very specific model. So they're the only one of all the options I've mentioned that have the full continuum. So independent, assisted living, and skilled nursing facility. So you're able to do short-term rehab or long-term care right there in that community. You're able to do assisted living and or memory care right there in that community. You're able to do independent living. Your spouse might live in independent living. You might be in the traditional assisted living, or you might be in independent living and your spouse needs the nursing home care. So this really lends itself well to individuals who may need different levels of care, or typically we see in this setting people who are planners and they're saying, you know what, if I need short-term rehab following a hip or knee operation, I want to make sure that I come right back to my community to receive that care. I am one building away or one floor away from my apartment or my cottage or whatever their home setting is there in that community. So that is your life plan community that has each of those levels of care in one campus. So now you're thinking, okay, you've introduced this concept of the life plan community. Tell me more. So typically they are nonprofit. Many of them are nonprofit. They often do have some type of religious or military affiliation. I know for the ones that I've worked in, including Ingleside, that is a religious affiliation. Our heritage dates back to the early 1900s as the Presbyterian Home for Widows. So our kind of history and that kind of those philanthropic roots are in caring for these spouses who partnered alongside their, usually it was a husband's career. They did not have their own career or their own retirement resources. Their spouse passed, and then they did not have the resources to retire and have care for themselves. So that's our history. Many of the communities I've worked in, like I shared, have some type of other religious or history or a military. Many of them may be non-religious affiliated now, but that is their roots, and they still maintain that nonprofit status. So when we talk about a community that has independent, assisted, and skilled nursing on one campus, one of the things, I mean, there's a lot that's really beautiful about that and that provides peace of mind when we talk about maybe having one spouse in one level of care and one in another. But one of the things that just tangibly every day is really cool and well thought out is that you have a huge body of individuals who are in independent living, active, planning programs, part of committees, and they're just living a robust lifestyle and they're super active. And then you have a resident in long-term care in that skilled nursing facility who is not able to do those things. They're not able to serve in a committee right now. They've had significant, whether it's physical or cognitive changes, but either their spouse who's in independent living or their adult child says, you know what, I want to take you to that concert. When you are in just a standalone skilled nursing facility or rehab facility, you don't have the indoor pool or the concerts or the multiple dining venues because you're not part of a whole campus. You're just in one standalone rehab building. But being in a building that you can say, hey, I'm going to walk down the hall or go down one floor, whatever the setup may be, over to this gorgeous cultural arts center and enjoy a riveting lecture, that's possible when you have an entire campus of people who are in different seasons of life, each contributing in different ways. And certainly in the middle, we see our assisted living and memory support settings where same thing applies. Those individuals can use all of these different dining venues. Some of them are still participating in committees, but you just have this diversity in terms of ability and capacity to participate as well as to contribute. And that's really unique. When you are in a standalone assisted living, you do not have some of that youth and energy that you get from an independent living community that's able to contribute in that way. And like I shared, plan all of these programs every single week. One of the reasons why people will look at a nonprofit life plan community is because of the resident supporting fund. I think each of the communities that I've worked in or that I'm aware of that is nonprofit life plan has some type of foundation or funding where they can care for the residents of their community who have outlived their resources through no fault of their own. And so that provides this assurance to the individual or their families that, you know what, if I outlive what I forecasted for myself or my retirement savings, and there was no way that I knew I was going to live to be 102, I thought I'd live to 95, that you're not looking for a new community at 96 years old. Huge, because if you are in a for-profit, for example, a for-profit assisted living, and at some point you run out of resources or no longer able to pay, well, then you're hoping that an adult child or someone is able to step in and start caring for you or covering that financial gap, because otherwise that for-profit community has a responsibility to make a profit and cannot just have you there without ability to pay. And so that is a huge difference between your nonprofits and your for-profits, and one of the reasons why people will look at being in a not-for-profit life plan community. Revenue invested back into the community. So for many individuals, this is something that's important. They want to know, I want to make sure that I'm in a community where, yes, they're making a profit, they're doing a great job, but they're investing those profits back into the community. So that new pool or an upgrade in a hallway that needed it, or adding track lighting so you can have a gallery wall, or just whatever the initiatives are on campus that is consistently, continuously being enhanced, because you don't have shareholders who are skimming off the profits. You have a board that is providing direction, and those funds are going back into that community to improve it. We talked a bit about opportunities for engagement across levels, different levels of care and living environments. But when you're in a nonprofit life plan community, again, you may have friends in independent living or a spouse there. You may have somebody that you're visiting in short-term rehab or long-term care. You're all on one campus. I remember caring for a woman a few years ago who was considering our community, and she said one of the hardest parts about where she currently was is that she had a great friend group in her assisted living community. And little by little, most of them, I think there's 4 of them, most of them had to move to a different community because they needed long-term care. And so whether it was, I think one had moved back with an adult child, one had moved to a long-term care, but now she didn't have those friends. And so she said it changed how she felt about the community that she once loved being in. Because it was only assisted living, she wasn't able to continue those relationships as people aged in different ways. When you're in a community that has all of those levels of care on one campus, that person is a hallway, an elevator ride, or a building away. We've talked a little bit about long-term care and short-term rehab or subacute rehab, which is what SAR is. If you're not familiar with those and you want to learn more, just email me and I can share with you about what that means. It's not the focus of today's call, but that is that kind of point C on the continuum where somebody would need significant physical care, whether that's for a long-term period or short-term period. And then one of my favorite things, friends and neighbors for life. And so we already kind of talked about how hard it is to have people move on to a different community because they need something different than what their assisted living offers, and losing that friend. Well, in a life plan community, those individuals are likely to stay on campus, just move to a different building or a different floor. Okay, so again, I know every single one of these slides is a lot of information, and I'm sorry to go so fast, but again, we're recording it so we can go back. What's helpful is to say, what do we do now? So you've shared when people think about assisted living, you shared about what it, when it's a good time to think about it, where the different places are that we might look. How do we start that search? So a Google search, that is your starting point for most people nowadays. We just jump on the computer and we look something up. So when we're doing a Google search, this is one just little word of caution that I will share with you. There are things that are sponsored. So meaning that company has paid extra through a marketing department or whatever to have their listing be at the top. And so that can be tricky because it means that you're going to click on that as just, oh, that's the nearest option, or that's the highest rated option. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And so just being savvy as you do a Google search, scroll down that page. You don't have to just look at the top options. And then as you're doing that, make some notes, jot down what you found, and don't end there. I would say, as opposed to right at that point saying, oh, they were the top option that came up, must be great, let me call. Let's do a second step. So you've jotted down a couple options that are nearby to you. Family friend referral. Ask the people in your life, hey, I know you went through this a couple years ago with your parent or with your spouse. I didn't really have any questions at the time, but now I'm doing the same thing. Can you tell me, did you look at any of these places that I just Googled, or what advice do you have for me? I would put 2 gold stars by this, except that we all have different preferences. And so what I would say is take this with a grain of salt. So you've asked them, they can share with you kind of their bias of what they did or didn't like about that place, but just understanding it's subjective. So one person might say, we loved a life plan community. It was perfect. Now, I can't say better things about Ingleside. And then somebody else might say, no, my husband needed a small group home. I wanted him with just 7 other people. And there was a group home in our neighborhood and it was perfect. So there's an element that's subjective, but still super helpful to ask if they've got a referral for you. So if you are highly analytical and you think, let me get my Excel document out, I am going to look up every community that's within a 25-mile radius. And then I'm going to jot down if they have a pool or not, if they're nonprofit or not. I'm going to go through the whole thing. Well, let me tell you, somebody already did that for you. He's a close colleague in the field. His name is Steve Gurney, and he has developed the Guide to Retirement Living source book. I think for more than 25 years, he's been publishing this. So reach out to me. I can get you a copy. You can also just Google that. And I think he has download copies available. So do not do all of that work in an Excel document. Somebody else has done that for you. And he has, I believe, as north as Delaware and south as most of Virginia. So in this region, he's covered it. Senior living navigator. So there are 2 types that I'm familiar with. And as you see, there's only a star by one of them. If you go through a large agency, I've listed here A Place for Mom as an example. What they're going to do is pretty much do that Google search for you. So you call them and then they say, okay, how old is your partner? What do they need? So they take us some general information and then they craft an email and they blast that out to whatever radius you tell them, 5 miles, 10 miles, 200 miles. What is not helpful is that they do not select by quality of the community. They do not select by price point. There's so many criteria that they could be more selective with, and that's not how it is. They select based off of who they have a contract with, who's agreed to receive referrals from them. So that is why they do not have a star by them. That's not something I recommend, but it is out there. And so if you've either already used it or you want to use it, know that that's a resource and that's out there. Small private practices or agencies that do this senior living navigating can be wonderful. So that is why there's a star by that. I refer to these types of groups who are often individuals that this is like a second career for them. They've done this already for a parent or both sets of parents or their own spouse. They know a lot about it. They are usually very local. So they might tell you, I only work in Northwest DC, or I only work in Howard County. So they are very specific to an area that they know well, and they're going to give you exact kind of options for what you say. If you're giving them information that implies you're only wanting to look at group homes, they're not going to even list the life plan communities that are in that region. So they are very specific, and I recommend that. My largest gold star is going to go to aging life care managers. So this is actually a credential. This type of person is often a social worker or a registered nurse or some type of clinician who has now migrated out of kind of traditional hospital or clinical practice into a private practice or agency that just supports older adults with their needs of living. So they may support your goal to age in place at home and help you find all the best resources for bringing that care into your home setting. They may support your desire to move to a community and identify all of the life plan communities for you, go on the tours with you. They may just be there for clinical support. And so you say, hey, twice a week, I need you to go over and check on my parent, have a conversation with them, just let me know how they're doing. So in many ways, to me, it feels like having an attorney on retainer. They're kind of there for what you need. They are expensive, but they do a phenomenal job of guiding you through this process. And they are not one and done, or hey, I found you what you need, you're done. They can stay on board with you for as long as you need and continue to provide that care. Even after someone moves into a community, if you're on the West Coast and your parent is on the East Coast, then this aging life care manager could go bi-weekly and say, hey, dining is still great, or your parents getting out to all these programs, or hey, cognitive change is starting to happen and that wasn't on our radar. So they're keeping tabs and supporting you in navigating all of this. So if you would like a referral to an aging life care manager, I'd be happy to provide one. I've worked with some phenomenal people in this field. And if you just want to Google it, do that as well. But either way, happy to help make that recommendation. So we would not be having a full conversation if we did not talk about the cost of assisted living. So I've just jotted down a few of my own thoughts here on this slide. And then what I would say is, if you do end up talking to an aging life care manager or doing some of your own research, dig deeper on all of this, because this is just kind of a very surface level perspective on the cost. So generally, you can have a rental community, meaning that you sign a 12-month lease for an assisted living apartment, 2-bedroom. Or you can be in an entrance fee model, which is most of your life plan communities are going to have an entrance fee model. And you are paying a large amount of money to move into independent living, but you know that you have access to assisted living or skilled nursing at the time that you would need it. So it's not a rental model. You do still have a monthly fee, but you're paying this large upfront buy-in or entrance fee. Again, and that's kind of securing your access to those higher levels of care. Those entrance fees are significantly refundable, so you're not walking away from those resources. I've seen 90%, 85%, 50% refundable. So each contract type within those life plan communities is going to be different model. So when you make your calls, and I don't want you to be surprised at say, oh my gosh, then you're not walking away from that. That's an entrance fee that a significant amount of it will be refundable. The alternative to that is just a straight up rental. Those are not your life plan communities. You do not have access to independent or skilled nursing. It's just assisted living, and you pay that monthly fee. I didn't even put it on here. There is an option of real estate. Typically applies to independent living, which is not what we're talking about today. So I didn't include it, but just know that that is an option. Your parent may say, hey, I'm going to buy this condo in a community that's all older adults. And that's certainly an option. Typically not an assisted living or medical care option. When we talk about the monthly fees, so those could be a bundled monthly rate, or those could be an a la carte charge or fee. So a lot of your life plan communities are going to have a bundled rate where they're saying, hey, everything, your level of care, your apartment, the cost of that room, your medication management, all of it is just one rate. So if you're going to move into our assisted living, the rate that you're going to pay is $14,500 every month, regardless of if you are level 1, 2, 3 or care. Of care. An a la carte model, which is typically seen in your for-profit communities, is going to say, hey, it's $8,000 to move into assisted living. That's your bedroom. Your spouse needs level 2 care, meaning there's quite a few activities of daily living that they need support with. That's $3,000 extra a month. So we're now at $11,000. Your meal plan is another $900. If your loved one needs more than 7 medications provided to them daily, that's $600. So these fees go up as the services increase. So for some people, that's an attractive thing because they say, hey, I need very little. I'm going to be level 1, small apartment. I know that I'm just paying this base cost. For other people, it's scary to think, okay, at what point does that tap out where I'm now paying $19,000 a month? I did not know it was going to be that much to be in assisted living. Private pay, I put this on there because I think it needs to be said. Assisted living is not covered by your Medicare benefits. And so maybe I'm double pointed here because I've got my last bullet point saying understand your Medicare benefits. Assisted living is not covered by insurance, and the only type of insurance that would cover it would be this second to last bullet point of long-term care insurance. So if you've invested in a policy, John Hancock or Genworth or one of these policies where you have paid into long-term care insurance, then yes, you will do an assessment process. They will send a verification of the care that you're receiving. The nursing staff will fill that out. They'll ask for the license level of that assisted living, and then some part or portion of that monthly bill will be covered by your long-term care insurance. That is the only type of insurance that covers it. It's important to understand your Medicare benefits. In the last, handful of months, I've had 3 different conversations with individuals who told me Medicare will pay for my assisted living. And at one of the conversations, I didn't even have to say anything. It was another gentleman at this lunch event that we had, and he said, no, it doesn't. He said, Medicare, will cover your stay in a skilled nursing facility if you need to be there for short-term rehab. Medicare would cover physical therapy in your home setting. Medicare might cover your medications if you have Part D, but Medicare does not, excuse me, Medicare does not cover the room and board long-term for assisted living. So that's just something, again, I want you to ask your care manager or ask the people that are doing this process with you about. I can't speak to your specific insurance benefits, but I can tell you that Medicare has not covered assisted living room and board for anyone that I've cared for, not just at the Ingleside communities, but elsewhere. It's a private pay setting. So choosing a community, I'll go through this quickly because this is subjective, up to you, what's important to you. But these are some of the things that I think about and what I hear from the clients who come in and meet with me. What is the size of the community? There are communities that are more than 1,000 people. So these are like villages, these mega communities where you've got multiple buildings. It feels like a college campus with tons of people. And that's 1,000 apartments. So maybe it has 1,500 people if they're married or spouses. So cohabitating. So you think about how large that community might feel. If you want to be, a little fish in a big pond, that might be perfect. So asking, what is the size of the community? Typically, if a community is less than 500 individuals, that's not considered large. And so you may say, oh, that's a sweet spot. I don't want to be in a community where it's only 80 people and I know everyone and they know my business. I don't want that, but I also don't want to be in 1,500, a community of 1,500 people. So finding maybe that sweet spot. Or again, back to the group home, maybe you only want 7 other neighbors. So what's the size of the community? What levels of care can be provided? If I was going to circle and highlight and bold one of these bullet points, that would be the one. Just make an informed decision. If you are going into an assisted living care setting, knowing that there is no skilled nursing facility, that if you need short-term rehab, you will go elsewhere. If you end up, or your spouse or your parent ends up needing significant care, they're totally dependent on nursing staff for all of their activities of daily living. They may be asked to leave and to go find a long-term care community or to bring in privately a caregiver to their setting, even in assisted living. Assisted living is not a stopgap of that being the end all be all for care. You may be in assisted living and the administrator or the director of nursing is saying your loved one is beyond what assisted living license provides. You need to substitute care or move to long-term care. If you have moved to a community that does not have long-term care, meaning skilled nursing facility, then you are at that point looking elsewhere. What types of living accommodations are provided? So if you want to be in a 2-bedroom and you're looking at a community that only has 1 bedroom or 1 bedroom and dens, then maybe you're going to say to the people that you're looking with, please don't waste my time. I know exactly what I want, and this community doesn't have that option. I know for some people, they want something larger than a studio. So if it is only a studio apartment, then they're going to say that doesn't work for me. In the memory setting, memory care and memory support, many communities only have studio. So be informed about what you're asking. When you're moving into independent living, the accommodations are largely important, right? Maybe you want a 3-bedroom, maybe you want a wraparound balcony. When we're talking about a memory setting, the room and the living accommodation becomes a lot less important. And we're talking way more about the overall environment. What kind of programs are being led? What kind of group spaces there, a library or an activity space. So the shared areas become a lot more important than your individual living space, where again, it may just be a studio. Is there a waiting list? So I've talked to innumerable people throughout the last year that have said, hey, I'm coming, I'd like to come over to Ingleside. We're ready to move, something in the next 30 or 45 days. Well, the Ingleside communities all have wait lists right now. That is somebody that I've had to refer time and time again over the past year to other communities to say, you know what, I would love to have you in our community, but if you need to move in the next 30 days, I'm going to refer you to, a colleague in the field at a different community because we don't have anything. So if you're in a position where you can be on a waiting list, then I would say right now, today is when you start making tours and appointments and say, we're going to maybe move a year from now, or we might not want to move at all, but we want to have a backup plan. Let me join your waiting list. If you are trying to move immediately, again, that list of communities that you could probably look at is small that have availability right away. Monthly fees, we kind of talked about this on the previous slide, but what's included in those monthly fees that you're paying. What do the ancillary fees look like? And just understanding kind of where your monthly fee is going to land, if it's a bundled rate or a la carte charges. Again, what services are provided within that monthly fee, what's not included. For example, at our communities, if you're going to the beauty salon, that's an a la carte charge. You're paying that salon whatever the service, for whatever the service is that you're receiving. So what are considered, not included fees? We talked about that. The review of a resident agreement or contract. Long before you need to sign that and pick your apartment and move in, you can ask for a copy of the contract so that at your leisurely pace, you can read through that and not feel like, oh gosh, they sent it to me on Monday and we're closing on Friday. I've got to read it quickly. No, as soon as you start looking at a community, you could ask for a copy of what their contract looks like. If you're looking at a nonprofit community, you can ask for a copy of their disclosure statement. So that's their financials. If you're looking at any assisted living or skilled nursing facility, you can either ask them for a copy of their latest state survey, or you can go online and find it. That's public information. And then I would also ask about staffing ratios. So we talked about this earlier, that the memory setting or the memory care setting should have a higher staffing ratio, including multiple different types of disciplines supporting that environment. So just asking about that, not just the number of staff, but what are their different credentials and who supports that neighborhood. So I have kind of wrapped up the general information of this call, and I want to share more specifically, briefly, probably at this point, about our 3 communities. We have, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, 3 life plan communities. They're all nonprofit. They each offer independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing facilities. All 3 of our communities have services that go out to the greater community. So we have our own home care agency. We have our own social day programs where individuals who have early cognitive change can participate in a daily program, 5 or 6 hours a day, where they're coming on campus to be with our team members and our residents. And then they actually go back home in the evening, and they don't have to be part of our community. So that's something that's open, again, to the greater community for individuals with early cognitive change. And then we also have a concierge line. So individuals who say, you know what, my plan is to age in place. I'm not trying to look at an Ingleside community, but do you have a recommendation for lawn care or for a home care agency? Or do you have a recommendation for getting my gutters cleaned out? So surprisingly, we have recommendations for all of that. We, our staff, our residents, we've all been in this area a long time. We've accumulated a lot of really good contacts in the DMV. And so we then created our concierge service where they can connect you with that individual who can provide the service you need. So again, that's, you're thinking non-healthcare, this doesn't have to do with moving into a community, this has to do with receiving services today in your current setting, like chef prepared meals that are delivered to you. Who's our vendor for that? So we connect you with them, and then Ingleside, if you will, kind of brokers that deal and helps you receive that service. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll back up one slide just to show you see these logos in the corner here. CARF accreditation is something that our communities have pursued. And so all I will say about this is just Google it, because if you are saying, I am only looking at nonprofit life plan communities, then go a step further and see which ones are CARF accredited. That's this gold standard of, oh my gosh, so many, more than 1,000 standards in terms of finance management and who's in leadership and types of hiring practices. I mean, it's all of these different standards. And so for a community to achieve that is a very big deal. And it's one way to kind of accredit or understand the quality of that type of community. So if you're saying, you know what, I'm only looking at nonprofit life plans, go ahead a step further and see if they are CARF accredited. And then our communities actually have quite a few more badges and nominations than just what you see here, but we are very proud to be Sage Care certified. And this is something voluntarily that our communities have pursued to make sure that we are caring for individuals who are older adults who are LGBTQ plus, and they're wanting to reside in our communities, that we're caring for them in an accommodating and respectful way. And so all of our staff have received that training. So just a little bit about Ingleside's vision and mission for how we want to care for individuals in our assisted living and memory support. I really zeroed in on our memory programs because that is something that we have taken kind of this extra layer of training, for our staff, and we've developed a well-being model. It's really important to us that the residents who choose to make Ingleside home continue to enjoy the things that they always enjoyed, and that we're finding out about them and highlighting those things. So they aren't moving to a community that says, hey, here's our regimented list of things that we've created for everybody. It's, what do you enjoy? What can we find that's already going on here on campus, or what do we need to start that brings you a sense of purpose and meaning and a way to express yourself? So that's what we're looking to do when we talk about individualized and person-centered dementia care. So this looks at like authentic living, them being able to be who they are and what was always central to them continuing to be. We want them to have purpose. So there's quite a bit here, but just understanding that this is our commitment when we're dementia care with excellence. If you've not heard the term before, person-centered care, person-centered living, that really is where most communities should be at. So if they're not already there, they should be heading that direction, where it's not about what the community wants, it's about what your loved one or you want. And so getting to know the person, meeting them where they're at with their cognitive change, caring for them in a way that is meaningful to them, and understanding the relationships that are in place in their life, being receptive to how to involve those individuals. So just think about positive changes from what maybe used to be kind of a sterile environment, and hey, here's how we do things, to how would you like to do things? What would make this transition better for your loved one or for your family? Who's here to support? How do we still bring them in? So very constructive and ongoing care plan development. So wrapping up here, you all have all been so patient to share your time with me as I've tried to go through a lot of information. If you are interested in the Ingleside communities and what I've shared today, and you're thinking, you know what, we aren't ready to move, but we want to be on a wait list, we want to have that plan. We might never want to move, but we still want to discover more and just make sure we're giving this thorough research. I can share with you that the way that we are caring for individuals with cognitive change is unique in terms of, as I shared, our well-being philosophy, our higher staffing ratio, our staff being certified dementia practitioners. We have additional roles that are not even regulated or required to have. So we have life enrichment managers who are leading programs, but then additionally, we have these memory program directors who are inspiring the teams. They're doing training. They're doing this kind of overall leadership. They're helping the families adjust to this big change of moving to a community. So just a lot of kind of wraparound support. As I already mentioned, all three of our communities are not-for-profit, mission-driven. The Ingleside organization only is in the DMV area right now. So if you're accessing this call from elsewhere, what I would recommend is just looking online for a nonprofit life plan community near you, where you can try to receive some of the same kind of wraparound care that is intentional and spans the entire continuum. At the Ingleside communities, we do have different services at each one. So it is specific. You'd have to call the sales office, or of course, you're welcome to reach out to me. But we can tell you about which physician offices are on site. For example, at our DC community, we have the George Washington Medical Faculty Associates on site. So it's different at each community, but you are welcome to call us and ask what's specific to that campus. And then at all of our communities, we have a bundled rate, and so that just means it's pretty clear what you're paying every month, and that's helpful as you forecast, well, my long-term care insurance will cover this much, or we forecasted to pay $14,000 a month, and it's helpful to know that that's what that rate is. And I'll say one other thing about the rates. If you're moving directly into assisted living and you're bypassing independent living, so you're saying, you know what, my loved one needs your memory support program, you are not paying that large entrance fee that you would be paying if you were moving into independent living. So again, something to ask our sales offices when you call. Just a floor diagram that I wanted to show with you. It's hard to see, I think, on a screen, but the layout, you see this rectangular shape, that's the design of our memory neighborhoods. So it is what is called a household model. You're thinking about apartments that kind of dot the periphery and then open up into this shared common area is able to enjoy together. It's really different from an independent living apartment that might be 3 bedrooms and on a long hallway. That's not really what we're going for here. We're going for time together in a common area, programs and socialization, not isolation in your own apartment. So yes, you have that private, beautiful space to rest and restore, but it is not what you spending your day. Similar layout at our community in Northwest DC, as opposed to a second and third floor, it's an east and a west neighborhood, but still that household model design. So I'll leave you with this slide, and if there's any questions in the chat, I'll stay on a couple of minutes extra to make sure we answer any and all of those questions. These are some of the reasons why somebody a move to a supportive, so whether that's traditional assisted living or a memory support or memory care setting, thinking about the stimulation intellectually that we already talked about. You know, when you've seen that with your loved one withdrawal, you want to get them back into that environment where they're making jokes at dinner and telling stories and calling on their intellectual reserves, is great practice. And we know that that can slow down the progression of dementia. You want other team members to care for them. You are not a 3-person or a 3-shift person. You need a break and a rest as well. And so being in an environment where there are, you know, professional staff who are compassionate, able to care for your loved one 24/7. We have 3 different shifts of team members. That really changes the picture from you being the only care partner. Supporting their independence. So you might think, wow, if I move to assisted living or memory support, I'm taking away their independence. Well, it's actually the opposite. If they're in a home where they do not feel safe, and they can't cook and they can't functionally use the area well, they can never go upstairs, you know, they feel trapped in that environment, even though they're home. Or you're saying, I'm bringing a 24/7 private companion in that they might feel is watching them all the time. That diminishes independence. But if you bring them to an environment where staff is available when needed, but otherwise they're in the library or they are enjoying a meal with others or a program, then you're actually fostering their independence to come out of their apartment and choose, do I want to go to that fitness class? Maybe I want to sit over there and do that puzzle or play chess with that individual, or maybe I want to read in the library. They're actually making many more choices than what they were doing at home, and it fosters increased independence. Safety and security, I don't think I need to say more about that. We've talked quite a bit about the environment that a memory support or memory care is structured around. We've talked a little bit about nutrition and hydration and how for their well-being to have those meals every single day prepared for them. I don't know that I shared this, but in the assisted living setting, not just in Ingleside, but anywhere, they do need to have the input of a dietary manager or registered dietitian. So there is that input on how the meals are created and what's delivered to your loved one. Availability of transportation, we haven't really talked about this at all, but communities have transportation departments who are able to take residents to whatever the cultural arts team has planned, right? Trips at the Kennedy Center or Longwood Gardens, or so many different things that are possible. Or maybe it's just medical transportation, but giving you that break that you don't need to be the only wheels for yourself or your loved one. We're talking about making an investment in the future. I mean, this is certainly something that is expensive, but if you're talking about bringing private care into the home, that's certainly more expensive. So there's not any way that you're not making some type of investment. And so thinking about what it looks like to be in assisted living, and then peace of mind. So if we're looking at a life plan community, that peace of mind is multifaceted. So you've got the whole continuum, knowing that short-term rehab and long-term care are there if you need it, knowing that there's that foundation that's a safety net for your loved one if they were to outlive their resources through no fault of their own, knowing that they don't leave friends behind when they move from independent to assisted living, or from assisted living to memory support, or from memory support to long-term care. Those friends are still on campus. So those are just some of the thoughts I want to leave you with. I think I have the contact information for each one of our communities here on the screen. So yeah, reach out to the sales office if something that I shared was of interest. I support all 3 of the Ingleside properties, so let them know you were on the webinar with Kiersten today. They'll either pass your call right along to me, or they can answer the question themselves. So let me check our chat and just see if there's any questions that I should answer. All right, what I will say is let me make sure we've got a Q&A. All right, I'm going to answer these. So what I will say is I'm done with the presentation portion. So if you didn't ask the question or you don't care about what the questions were, you are welcome to jump off the call now. Thank you so much for spending a portion of your day with Ingleside. So one of the first questions I have is if Westminster at Lake Ridge, that is our community in Prince William County, Virginia, has memory care They do. Their memory care is at the skilled nursing facility level. So that's that highest level of care on that continuum. We said point C. So that answers our first question. Second question is what memory care? Oh, okay. Another one about Westminster. You didn't mention that. So again, it's at the skilled nursing facility level. And then how long is the wait list at Ingleside at the moment? That's not specific enough. I would need to know which community. They all have different, oh, okay, for assisted living. So traditional assisted living, can you answer if you're talking about Northwest DC or Rockville, Maryland? Or if you're talking about Prince William County, Virginia, they all have different waitlist lengths. I believe that Westminster at Lake Ridge has the soonest availability for assisted living. Okay, so for DC, we're saying 6 months to a year. I believe it's similar for Rockville, Maryland. I think I shared this earlier, but please, if does it make sense to join the wait list? Yes, I can tell you right now, we have a $300 application fee that is not refundable and a $1,000 deposit that is refundable. So you're $300 for the peace of mind of being on a wait list with Ingleside. Other communities have different fees. My strong recommendation is if anything that I shared is applicable today, to go and pursue some tours or communities, or just saying, hey, I've got a strong referral from a family friend to join the waitlist at Ingleside, great, do it. If this is not the right choice for you, you're walking away from a $300 application fee. What are the costs for assisted living in the DC location? The traditional assisted living and the memory support are pretty similar. They're both just right around $15,000 a month. And again, that's a bundled rate. So whether you're level 1, 2, or 3 of care at the DC location, it's just a bundled rate, just shy of $15,000 a month. All right, for any of the other questions that may come up after we jump off this call, let me just share with you, you can reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to answer those questions for you. And we are really transparent. So you can ask us about costs or whatever. We'll get that information to you right away. I see one other question on your slide. It did not have memory care listed. That's why I asked the question. Correct. So each community does have a skilled nursing facility. The only of our 3 communities that actually has a locked memory care is the community, meaning at the skilled nursing, that highest level of care is at the Virginia community. At DC and at Maryland, they have a secured, meaning a locked memory care, memory support at the assisted living level. All 3 of our communities have some type of memory care or memory support that is secured, which level of care depends on the jurisdiction that it's in. All 3 of our communities also have the social day program, which is kind of offered at like an independent setting, and you can either reside in our community or not. What is the wait list time for independent living at the 2 Ingleside? So I guess we're talking Northwest DC and Rockville, Maryland. That is a very, very specific question. If you are looking for a larger apartment, like a 2-bedroom den or a 3-bedroom, we're talking multiple years, 5+ years. If you are talking about, I'll take anything, an English basement apartment or a studio in independent living, then that's probably a 1.5 years. So I think Rockville tends to have a little bit of a shorter wait list because they have more apartment homes than Northwest DC. Northwest DC tends to have a longer wait list, again, because there's less opportunities there. What is the wait list time at Westminster for 2-bedroom? I do not know, but I can get back to you. I think Michelle has told me that's about 2 years or a 1.5 years. But if you'd be kind enough to just leave a voicemail for me or for Westminster at Lake Ridge, we can get back to you for that. In general, I don't think I see any other questions, so I'll leave you with this thought for whoever's still on the call with me. It used to be kind of a point of bragging if your community was fully occupied or if you were working off of a wait list. That is not necessarily the case anymore. I am frequently out in the community touring other communities, whether it's just assisted living, nonprofit, life plans, all of it. And a lot of people have wait lists now. So I think that is a reflection of the large generation that is now coming up on retirement. And even if they don't plan to move into a community, many people are planning ahead to at least join a wait list. And so that's what we're seeing, is that even communities that maybe in the past would not have had wait lists or weren't in the most desirable area or didn't have the best floor plans or whatever it may be, even those communities are now working off of wait lists. So if there's any part of you that says, hey, my kids are in that area, I'm thinking about it, or we have a diagnosis, this may be down the road for us, or my first choice is to age in place at home, but I want to have a backup plan, invest the $300 for the application fee and join one of the wait lists. And again, it doesn't have to be an Ingleside community. It can be whatever makes the most sense to you and your family. But I would say join 1 or 2 wait lists in the area that you feel like makes the most sense for you. Okay, thank you all for investing so much time to be on today's call. We do have the recording. I'm going to end it now. And I look forward to hearing from any and all of you. Please reach out with your questions and join us for our next webinar on February 18th.